I had a question come in from a client this week, and I thought I would explain my thought process of coming up with a recommendation. And so the problem was they have a table, it's almost 20 gigabytes, and they want to index it. And so this creates a problem if you create a table and you wait a long time and it gets really big, it becomes more and more difficult to do maintenance operations on that table. And so that's why it's best to really think about indexing and anything related to the table in terms of its structure up front, especially if that table is going to grow very large. So the challenge here is that we have a table, it's very large, we want to add some indexes to it. We're estimating that it's going to take maybe 4 to 5 hours to create those indexes, and we really don't want to have that much downtime. So there's these webhooks that are interacting with this table that are probably doing inserts into it. And so the problem here is how do we come up with a way to add these indexes with minimal impact on the operations of this database? So what I recommended was to create a new table. So let's say the table's name was RPS. We'll just create something called RPS new. It's got the identical schema plus the new indexes that we want to create, or we can hold those off and create them after we populate the table with the initial population. And what we want to do is, I'm really assuming here, and most tables are like this, they have some sort of table or column in it that tells you when data came into it, like an insert date or something like that. And I'm really counting on the fact that this is more of a historical type table, like a log table, and it doesn't have a lot of updating going on. And so what we want to do is copy all of the existing table. We're going to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, we're going to take all the table over from the original table to our new table with the identical structure. And we're going to draw a line in the sand. Let's just say it's April 27th, which is today's date. We're going to take everything prior to April 1st. And we're just going to take all the data and put it into our historical table. And then we're going to hold that less for the cutover time. And obviously, the less amount of data that you can bring over a cutover, the faster this is going to go. So, you might want to just draw a line in the sand to yesterday and take all the data over. The key is that the data is not being updated, or you have a way to detect when that data is being updated in the source, so that when you do the cutover, you can include all the new records as well as anything that's been updated since you did that initial population. So our plan here, we're going to create RPS new, which is the new version of the table, match schema, match indexes, and add our new indexes. And we're going to pull that over at any time we want, right? We can pull that data over, uh, assuming it's not being updated. And we're going to take that load. And in this case, like I said, we'll take everything before April 1st, 2025. We're going to define a cutover window when we're going to schedule moving over that additional data, because when we do that, we are going to have to shut off processing to the table. And so we need to schedule that, ideally for a time, over a night or over a weekend or sometime that you can schedule maintenance for your system. And in some cases, you can even like keep things running and route the data to a different table, but you'll have to do some additional work in order to accomplish that. And then what we're going to do is when we do cutover, we're going to actually move all that additional data over. So we're going to stop all of the processing. We're going to move over the additional data. And then we're going to swap these tables. We need to swap our RPS new to the RPS table. And so that's just going to be a rename operation. And so you need to make sure that if you've got anything like identity columns, or there's different columns in the table that are dependent on that initial insert, or you have some sort of mechanism for loading them, you'll need to consider that when you're doing your table swap and your initial population. Some considerations, like I said, you need a reliable detection mechanism for if there's data being updated in a table in any way, because you need to get those updates into your new table. Something else to keep in mind is this particular strategy requires that you have 2x the original storage, maybe even more than 2x, because you're adding additional indexes. And you need to consider that and make sure you've got enough space so you don't get into trouble. Another thing to consider is if you've got foreign keys, you need to make sure, in some cases, you might have to disable those foreign keys and then re-enable them afterwards, and consider that in your timing for your cutover. And as I said, if you've got something like a identity column or some kind of column that is guaranteeing uniqueness and being generated for each and every row, you might need to disable that as you're taking your data over in your scripts. So the benefits here, you've got minimal downtime, possibly even seconds instead of hours. You've got improved performance after you're done with your new indexes. You're future-proofed because you're ready for new growth in your table, because now you can scale. You've got these indexes and you're not degrading performance proportionally to the number of rows that come in anymore. You're going to degrade at a much lower rate when you've got proper indexing in place. And then it preserves your real-time logging, so there's no interruption during when you're doing your prep work and you're doing the bulk of your data population of your new table. So for today's video, I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you got something out of it. And I just want to add that you can really use this technique for any major relational database. You could use it for SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL. It's kind of universal. Anytime you've got indexes that you're dealing with and you're trying to minimize the impact of creating indexes on large tables, you can use a similar approach. So again, I hope you got something out of it. If you did, please consider liking the video and follow the channel. And please share the channel with your friends. And of course, subscribe. Thanks. Bye.